A lot of you have been telling me for weeks that NATO would never lose a single soldier to ancient armies because of air superiority. You are mostly right. So this video answers the question directly. Which army in history could actually challenge a modern air force in real combat? To make this analysis honest, we are not covering every army that ever existed. We are covering 7 specific armies that represent the peak military capability of their era. Rome at the height of the empire, Napoleon's Grande Armee, the Imperial German Army of World War I, the Wehrmacht of World War II, the Soviet Red Army of 1989, the modern Chinese People's Liberation Army, the modern Russian Armed Forces. If their best could not threaten a modern air force, neither could anyone else from their era. The opposing force is a NATO combined air wing, F-22 Raptors, and F-35 Lightning IIs as the stealth corps, F-16 and F-15 as fourth-generation backbone, AWACS for command and control, and aerial refueling tankers for sustained operations. Roughly 200 aircraft total, the kind of force NATO routinely deploys for peer-level air campaigns. Each army gets evaluated on 4 real technical criteria. Detection. Can they see modern aircraft, especially stealth? Reach. Can their weapons physically engage aircraft at altitude? Numbers. Do they have enough launchers and interceptors to saturate NATO defenses? Doctrine. Do they know how to coordinate air defense effectively? An army needs all 4 to seriously threaten a modern air force. Most fail on at least one. Some fail on all 4. Let's go in order. Rome at peak. Roman legions at the height of the empire fielded approximately 350,000 trained soldiers across 30 legions, with siege engines, scorpions, and ballistae. Effective range of Roman ranged weapons was approximately 400 meters horizontal, with effectively 0 anti-air capability. Detection was line of sight only. Numbers of anti-air weapons, 0, because the concept did not exist. Doctrine for fighting flying enemies, 0. NATO aircraft fly at 10,000 meters cruising altitude. Rome cannot detect them, cannot reach them, has no weapons designed for them, and has no doctrine for engaging them. NATO suffers 0 combat losses. Rome scores 0 out of 4. Napoleonic Grande Armee. Napoleon at his peak commanded over 600,000 men with the most advanced artillery system in pre-industrial history. Cannon range was approximately 1,500 meters horizontal direct fire, with no vertical engagement capability against aerial targets. Detection remained line of sight. Anti-air weapons, still 0. Doctrine, still 0. The Grande Armée was a generational leap above Rome in tactical sophistication, but the gap between 1815 and modern air capability is total. NATO operates with the same impunity it would have over Rome. Napoleon scores 0 out of 4. Imperial German Army, World War I. This is the first army on the list that could touch a modern aircraft, and the answer is barely. WWII produced the first dedicated anti-aircraft weapons. Water-cooled machine guns mounted on improvised vertical stands and modified field artillery firing shrapnel rounds. Effective ceiling against aircraft was approximately 3,000 meters. NATO aircraft fly above this for cruise and combat. Detection was visual spotting only. No radar existed. The German Army of 1918 had perhaps a few thousand anti-aircraft weapons across the entire Western Front. Numbers were inadequate to defend against concentrated NATO strikes. Doctrine existed but was primitive. NATO loses 0 to a small handful of aircraft over an entire campaign, primarily through random luck rather than effective engagement. Air superiority is functionally absolute. Germany 1918 scores 1 out of 4, partial reach only, against aircraft that mostly fly above their ceiling anyway. Wehrmacht of World War II. This is the first army that genuinely contests airspace, and the data backs that up. Nazi Germany produced over 20,000 88mm flak guns during the war, the legendary 88, capable of engaging aircraft up to 8,000 meters altitude with timed fuse shells. The Luftwaffe at its peak fielded over 5,000 aircraft, including Bf-109s, FW-190s, and the world's first operational jet fighter, the Me-262. Early radar systems detected approaching aircraft, Freya at over 200 kilometers range, with Würzburg providing 70-kilometer tracking for fire control. None of this radar could track stealth profiles, which did not exist as a design challenge in the 1940s. Combined arms anti-air doctrine was sophisticated. Against NATO, the Wehrmacht's reach is finally real. 88mm flak rounds can theoretically hit fourth-generation fighters at lower altitudes. Me-262s closing to gun range pose actual threats. NATO would lose aircraft. Historians estimate 10 to 30 fourth-generation aircraft destroyed in a sustained air campaign, primarily F-16s and F-15s, caught at low altitude during ground attack missions. F-22s and F-35s remain effectively untouchable due to stealth profiles defeating Würzburg radar. Wehrmacht scores 3 out of 4, detection at primitive level, reach against fourth-generation aircraft, real numbers, developed doctrine. Fails on detection of stealth specifically. Soviet Red Army of 1989. This is where the answer to the video's question actually starts. The Soviet Army at peak was specifically designed to defeat NATO air power. The integrated air defense system included approximately 10,000 surface-to-air missile launchers, S-75, S-125, S-200, S-300 systems with engagement altitudes up to 30,000 meters and ranges over 200 kilometers. Detection through over 10,000 radar systems coordinated through the most extensive integrated air defense network in history. The Soviet Air Force fielded over 7,000 combat aircraft, including MiG-29 and MiG-31 interceptors. Doctrine was 40 years of refinement against NATO specifically. Against modern NATO, the Soviet 1989 force genuinely contests air superiority. Stealth aircraft remain difficult for Soviet radar to track at long range, but S-300 systems can detect F-22s and F-35s within engagement range under certain conditions. Fourth-generation NATO aircraft face real losses. Military analyst estimates suggest NATO would lose 50 to 150 aircraft over a sustained campaign, including potentially 5 to 15 stealth fighters to combined SAM and interceptor engagements. Soviet 1989 scores 4 out of 4, but with the asterisk that NATO still wins air superiority eventually, just at significant cost. Modern Chinese People's Liberation Army. China currently fields the J-20 stealth fighter, between 200 and 300 operational units as of 2026, alongside H-6 strategic bombers and an integrated air defense system using HQ-9 SAMs, comparable to Russian S-300 capability, and HQ-19 systems for high-altitude defense. Total Chinese combat aircraft exceed 3,000. Detection through KJ-500 AWACS aircraft and modern radar networks specifically designed against stealth profiles. Doctrine is post-1990s and increasingly capable. Against NATO, modern China is the first opponent NATO does not automatically defeat. F-22 versus J-20 is contested at the engagement level. F-22 retains the edge in stealth and avionics, but the gap is measured in single digits, not orders of magnitude. NATO would lose 50 to 200 aircraft, including potentially 10 to 30 stealth fighters in a sustained campaign. Air superiority becomes a contested space rather than NATO automatic. China scores 4 out of 4. Modern Russian armed forces. Russia fields the Su-57 stealth fighter, approximately 25 operational units, S-400 and S-500 SAM systems, with the longest ranges of any deployed air defense network, and over 1,200 combat aircraft. Russian air defense doctrine has decades of operational refinement, tested across Cold War posture, Syria, and Ukraine, though Ukraine has revealed significant gaps in operational performance. Detection capability against stealth is comparable to or slightly ahead of Chinese systems on the SAM side, but neither system has demonstrated reliable stealth tracking at standoff range. Against NATO, Russia poses similar threats to China through different mechanisms. Fewer total aircraft, but more sophisticated SAM systems on paper. NATO loses 30 to 150 aircraft, including 5 to 20 stealth fighters in a sustained campaign. Russia scores 4 out of 4. The answer: 3 of 7 armies tested cannot meaningfully threaten a modern air force at all. Rome, Napoleon, and WWII Germany scores 0 or 1 out of 4. NATO operates with overwhelming impunity and would lose effectively no aircraft. One army, the Wehrmacht, reaches 3 out of 4. Real losses are possible against fourth-generation aircraft caught at low altitude, but stealth remains untouchable. 3 armies meet the full threshold. Soviet 1989, modern China, and modern Russia all score 4 out of 4. These are the only armies in history that can genuinely contest NATO air superiority. All 3 are post-1989. None of them are ancient. The truth is what the comments have been saying. NATO would never lose a single soldier to ancient or pre-industrial armies, because no army before 1944 could even touch them. NATO would lose modest numbers to World War II-era enemies. NATO loses real aircraft only against post-1989 peer militaries. To answer the title's question directly, no army in history could beat a modern air force. NATO wins air superiority against every opponent on this list, including the strongest ones. But 3 armies could threaten that air force in ways that produce real losses and real costs. That distinction matters.